And tomorrow, Democratic voters in New York's 16th Congressional District will settle what has become a contentious primary fight. Incumbent Congressman Jamaal Bowman has become a vocal critic of the Israeli government and military action in Gaza. He faces Westchester County Executive George Latimer. Let's bring in our political panel, Dave Weigel and Deepa Shivram. Dave is a politics reporter for Semafor. Deepa is a White House correspondent for NPR. Great to have both of you here. Deepa, let's begin with you. New York.
Yeah.
We're paying attention to Washington. What's the big picture here on this race?
This is, I think, an interesting race because it brings in so many elements that we honestly don't even have the space for sometimes in our political conversation to get into, right? We're talking about massive amounts of money in politics, advertising. We're talking about issues in the Middle East. We're talking about issues of race. These are all things that normally in a primary race, we're not having to get into everything all at once. And then when you scale it back even further, you look at who's endorsed these candidates, right? Jamaal Bowman being endorsed by Bernie Sanders, members of the squad, obviously, Hillary Clinton on the other side endorsing George Latimer. So we're seeing a lot of the Democratic divides that we've been talking about since 2015, 2016 playing out in this race in this one congressional primary in New York. So it's a small, it's a district that we would normally be paying a ton of attention to, but really being outsized because of all of these issues.
Build on that point. Some Democrats nationally looking at this as a proxy battle between, let's just call it the Bernie Sanders wing or the AOC wing versus the more Clintonian establishment Democratic wing, especially when it comes to foreign policy. You were in the district. You've reported over the weekend on this race. Is it on the ground as much a proxy battle, or is it much more about the district and different personal issues with the candidates?
I think that's a fair assessment of it. It's also a heat check on how the left has lost some ground inside the party since 2020. The Justice Democrats who were on the ground organizing for Bowman, who helped him win in 2020, they've shrunk down most of their staff. Working Families Party is in New York, but it's been limited to by actions Governor Kathy Hochul's taken about ballot access. The left is just in a weaker position. The left, as defined by these pro-Bernie organizations that were built after 2016.
Just real quick follow-up on that. Yeah. Why do you have that assessment as a reporter? Yeah. The left's a little bit weaker. Bernie Sanders runs, the Vermont senator, in 2016, 2020, builds a movement around his campaigns. Is it because Sanders is not running again for president that it's somehow fallen away? What's the reason for this progressive movement to have a bit of a stumble in your view?
Yeah, well, Latimer's run a smart campaign where he's running as a progressive. His ads all talk about how progressive he is, how he's taken on the NRA, et cetera. His argument being, I'm a pragmatic progressive. I can get things done that Jamaal Bowman can't because he fights with Democrats all the time. That's an argument that really every AIPAC, UDP, Democratic Majority for Israel, all their candidates, all their ads make that argument. I'm not running as a conservative. I'm running as a fellow progressive without that baggage. So they're losing some ground as an electoral force because they've succeeded inside the party. We've covered the Tea Party. We've covered this happens when organizations are successful. Inside the district, Latimer is also very popular. And talking to AIPAC folks and DMFI folks today, they wish they had a Latimer in every one of these squad districts. They don't. They actually only have two challengers who are seen as making a real run at incumbents in the squad. They have Cori Bush coming up in August, and they have this race. They wish they had more county executives who've been elected for 35 years. They don't. But the argument that's winning is be a progressive, support Joe Biden, vote for this guy, not the guy who's talking about AIPAC and Israel all the time.
Back in Washington, well, actually, it's a little bit in Maryland.
Yeah.
Camp David. President Biden's preparing for this debate. What are you hearing from your sources in the White House about how prep is going? What really matters when it comes to the issue focus on Thursday night?
I mean, you're going to hear about Trump a lot. I think not just from Trump himself, but you're going to hear, I think, from President Biden to bring up almost, issues that Trump has said himself, right? We see the DNC, the White House, sending out notes, emails all the time of, here are the 9 points that Donald Trump made today. And the fact of the matter is voters, a lot of voters in this country, are not clued into this election yet. So they're missing most of what Donald Trump is saying on a weekly basis. And so the role that Joe Biden has to play in this debate is not only defending his record of the last 4 years, but also looking at Donald Trump and saying, well, you've said this is what you're going to do. Project 2025, the things that Donald Trump is talking about, Joe Biden really needs to emphasize so that voters start paying attention.
Is there any debate, we'll start with Dave and then Deepa, is there any debate about that kind of focus on Trump? President Biden had the American Rescue Plan early on in 2021, over $1 trillion, and the infrastructure package. We saw some campaigns when they put the huge spotlight on Trump, like Terry McAuliffe's gubernatorial in 2021 in Virginia. It doesn't always work. Sometimes it works. Is there a debate in the party about this?
There is some debate about why Biden is not laying out more clearly what he would do in a second term. This is similar to what Trump didn't do in 2020. It was hard to get some hard details about what Trump would do, apart from some things he got interested in at the end of the campaign, like ending DEI across the federal government. The Democrats' message is basically he will finish the job, give us a majority, we'll pass popular progressive, I wouldn't say progressive, popular policies that'll uplift more people. They have that argument, but they're going into a debate where most of the country for 4 years, accelerating since the 2020 election, have said Donald Trump is not too old to be president and Joe Biden is. Donald Trump looks like he can't handle the job and Joe Biden couldn't. So obviously they need to just let Trump get over his skis, and any effort to make that happen, it's less about here's what I'm going to do in a second term. It's more, do you really want to hand the keys back to this guy?
It's interesting. I think, you look at someone like Kamala Harris, who is speaking in Maryland today. She's going to Arizona later. She is someone who, especially on this issue of abortion, really does well when she has someone to punch at.
Right.
She sounds stronger. She's more effective in her communication when she has someone like Donald Trump to be like, he's guilty, like what he said, what she was saying earlier today in Maryland. I will say, though, I think on Joe Biden's side, and sometimes when I hear from voters, I was just in Pennsylvania over the weekend at an event with the First Lady who was talking about abortion. And I heard from voters there who are big Joe Biden fans. They're already voting for the president. That's not in question. But even they were like, I kind of think we talk about Trump too much. Like, we said Trump's name too many times in this event, but we didn't talk about a second Joe Biden term.
What was your impression of the First Lady on the trail?
She's strong. And like Kamala Harris, she has a personal experience with talking about abortion. So that is something that, we know this president, not super comfortable talking about abortion, doesn't even often use the word abortion. And so when you have messengers like Kamala Harris and Jill Biden out on the trail talking about how they were personally affected by this, I think it comes on pretty strongly in the room, and people are excited to see someone like her, oftentimes a little bit better than being excited about seeing the president, who, as we know in polls, doesn't really have a lot of enthusiasm around his campaign.
So let's build off of my conversation with Finn Gomez on the VP search for Trump. Instead of talking about who Trump might pick, which is a fruitless endeavor because none of us can read Donald Trump's mind, let's say you and I have covered a lot of VP searches over the years together. I remember driving down to Norfolk, Virginia in 2012, the night Paul Ryan leaked out that he was going to be the pick, and racing to get there to see Mitt Romney announce it. Let's say Doug Burgum, the North Dakota governor's picked. What's the impact in the race, if any?
I think there's already some spin being built to make him look like a moderating force inside the party. This is what happened with Mike Pence. Democrats struggled. I think they got some traction because of Pence's social conservative record, but they struggled to say this guy who looks like a normal adult politician is a big danger to the country. But they're in the same position with the vice president. If you look at not just her approval ratings, but the messages that go out about her on social media or the videos that get shared on social media, she also has this reputation as somebody who can't put a sentence together, and she clearly can. If you see her on the trail, there'll be maybe a couple bad moments and good moments. So I think if it's a Burgum situation, the spin would be here's an adult who can help Donald Trump govern. What's his actual record? And he'd be squared up against somebody who people think they don't like right now.
Any quick final thoughts?
I'm curious if he'll pick a woman. We don't know. As you said, we don't have a crystal ball. Yeah,
maybe Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the Arkansas governor.
There are
Kristi
options.
Noem, the South Dakota governor.
Yeah.
There are a lot of internal discussion, I'm told, about if he picks a woman for the ticket, does that actually bring some of his issues from the past about his interactions with women to the fore in a way that it might not with Doug Burgum or J.D. Vance. We'll see. Too much speculation with the VP search. We're doing our best here to focus on the reporting. Dave Weigel and Deepa Shivram, thank you so much for stopping by. We really appreciate it.